Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something heavy based on the sources you've shared with us.
Yeah, definitely a challenging topic.
Our mission here is to kind of unpack what these sources are calling a chilling pattern. Essentially, how global conflict might not just be happening, but could actually be, well, engineered for significant economic profit.
It's quite a claim. We're trying to look past the usual headlines.
Exactly. Go deeper into some maybe uncomfortable mechanics.
It's tough stuff to face, absolutely. But the information, the data in your sources, it's pretty stark. We have to start with the immediate human cost, right?
Yeah.
The real impact.
Yeah, that figure jumps out immediately. Between 2000 and mid-2025, the sources point to at least 6 to 7 million lives lost, directly from war, terrorism, the aftermath.
It's profoundly grim.
And the sources really make it personal, don't they? They don't just give you the number. It represents, whole communities shattered. It's a scale of suffering that's almost, yeah, impossible to truly grasp.
Precisely. And it's heartbreaking seeing those huge numbers translated into individual stories, lives that, as the material shows quite powerfully, kind of become collateral damage on some global balance sheet.
Like Amira, the 10-year-old from Gaza.
Exactly. The sources say she was pulled from rubble after a strike. Just one casualty among, over 56,000 in that specific conflict.
It's horrific.
And the broader picture there is just devastating. 90% of people displaced, hospitals gone, infants dying from malnutrition, aid agencies literally warning of famine.
In that quote from her mother, it just stays with you. They shot everyone racing for bread. We didn't know if we'd get food or die.
Just,
Unimaginable desperation.
it really paints a picture. And then there's the story of Ihor, the Ukrainian father.
Ah, yes, his son killed by shelling in Kiev back in 2023.
Right. And the sources report over 180,000 deaths just among Ukrainian and Russian soldiers combined. And that number doesn't even touch the injured, the disabled.
So many lives affected.
It just highlights that behind every single statistic, there's a person, a family torn apart.
So, okay, you have this immense human suffering. How do the sources connect that back to this idea of a global economic engine? It feels like an uncomfortable turn, but it seems crucial here.
It is a sharp turn, but it's central to the argument in the sources. What's striking is how quickly the narrative in some of this material pivots from that human cost to, well, corporate gains.
You mean the big defense contractors?
Yes, the documents specifically highlight major weapons producers. Companies like BAE Systems, Rheinmetall, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon.
Yeah.
They're presented as, key players in what is undeniably a massive industry.
And there's actual evidence of them ramping up production, right?
Oh, absolutely. Tangible stuff like RDX output, that's a key explosive, up 16 times. Ammo factories literally doubling their capacity.
Wow.
And what's really noteworthy is Russia, now producing 3 million artillery shells a year.
3 million?
Yeah, which the sources state is triple the combined U.S. and EU output, apparently due in large part to what they call near-zero production costs there.
Near zero. Okay, that's
Yeah.
something. And the money involved overall, the financial scale.
Looking at the 2023 data cited, the numbers are just staggering. Global military spending hit $2.44 trillion.
Trillion, with a T.
Trillion. And the top 5 countries? They alone spent a combined $1.5 trillion of that.
And the defense companies themselves. How much did they pull in?
They generated $632 billion in revenue. That's global defense company revenue. U.S. firms accounted for $317 billion of that total.
So more than half from U.S. companies. And specific examples like BAE Systems. Their profits soared.
Yeah, BAE saw profits jump 51%, according to the sources. Their share price hit an 11-year high. It's a huge amount of money flowed directly into these companies.
Okay, so you see these massive profits, soaring stock prices. It definitely raises questions. But I guess some people would argue, well, this is just the price of security, right? Unfortunate, maybe, but necessary. How did the sources address that view?
That's exactly the point the sources try to deconstruct. They don't just present the numbers. They outline this very clear cyclical model. They call it a 6-stage war economy model.
A war economy model.
Yeah, basically explaining how conflict itself can be perpetuated or even fueled for profit.
6 stages. It sounds almost like a playbook. What's step 1?
Stage 1 is conflict sparked. This is where some tension, maybe a border incident, a terror attack like in Kashmir, or missile fire in the Middle East, gets framed into a specific narrative. It's the initial trigger.
Okay, the spark. And then what's next?
Stage 2, media amplifies fear. Suddenly, the news shifts, right? Less political analysis, more panic. Headlines like breaking, threat to national security start dominating.
So whipping up fear.
That amplification seems absolutely key, according to this model, for setting up stage 3.
Which is?
Government expands budget. Almost overnight, it seems. Legislatures approve huge defense spending packages, billions allocated for ammo, missiles, drones, you name it.
Often framed as urgent, essential for security.
Exactly. And once that money is approved, you get stage 4. Companies fulfill contracts.
So the big players, Lockheed, BAE, Raytheon, they kick into high gear.
Precisely. Factories start humming, production lines speed up, workers might even get overtime. It's a boom time for these specific companies.
Which naturally leads to stage 5.
Stage 5. Stock value rises. Investors see the contracts, they increase production, and they react. Defense stocks hit multi-year highs. Profit margins climb, like we saw with BAE. The market, in effect, rewards the conflict.
Okay, so money flows, stocks rise. What's the final stage? How does it keep going?
Stage 6. Lobbying ensures continuation. This is where the cycle really seems to lock itself in, according to the sources. CEOs meet with government officials. They work to secure future money, things like guaranteed ammo quotas, big international trade shows, maybe even quid pro quo deals.
So they're actively working to keep the demand high, to keep the cycle going.
That's what the model suggests. It becomes sort of self-perpetuating. It's quite a chilling cycle to lay out like that, isn't it?
It really is. And the sources, they don't just leave it as an abstract model, do they? They bring in personal stories again.
Yes, and these personal perspectives really hammer home the unsettling reality of this whole picture. They show this stark contrast.
Between the people actually living through the conflict and those
Yeah.
benefiting financially.
Exactly. There's one account from a UN aid worker. She lost her 8-year-old niece in a bakery bombing in Gaza. And she notes, as her home burned in Texas, Lockheed shares ticked upward.
Wow. That's incredibly jarring, putting it side by side like that.
It really puts the financial gain in a very sharp, very human perspective.
And there was another perspective, right? Someone working in tech.
Yeah, an anonymous employee at a New York tech firm. They shared how, when the news of the Ukraine invasion broke, their personal portfolio, specifically their investment in a defense ETF, one of those bundled funds.
Right, an exchange-traded fund focusing on defense stocks.
Exactly. That investment suddenly looked safe. They described going from shock about the invasion to horror, then to disbelief about their own financial situation benefiting.
That really makes you think, doesn't it? About how individuals, maybe even unknowingly, get tied into this system.
And this gets to what the sources call the broken choice.
Broken choice.
Yeah, the idea that death itself becomes a kind of product, fear becomes a marketing tool, and peace, well, peace doesn't really offer those neat quarterly profit statements.
It's a really powerful and, frankly, disturbing concept to consider.
It is. But amid all this darkness, the sources do actually point towards an alternative, don't they?
They do. This idea of a peace dividend. What exactly do they propose?
The alternative they lay out is actually quite striking. They suggest that for just 10%, only a tenth of what the world spends on the military each year,
Okay.
we could potentially eradicate global hunger, build hundreds of thousands of schools, provide climate resilience for the poorest nations.
Just 10%. That's remarkable.
It is. But then you have to ask, why doesn't it happen?
And connecting it back to the economic drivers we've been discussing, the reason this peace dividend often gets ignored becomes, well, painfully obvious from the perspective of these sources.
Right. As the materials emphasize, these positive alternatives, ending hunger, building schools, they just aren't profitable ventures in the same way for arms companies, for stock markets, or for the political machinery that's often intertwined with them.
The incentives are just completely misaligned, according to this view.
That's the absolute critical takeaway here. The current system, as described, doesn't reward peace in the same way it appears to reward conflict and the profits that come with it.
So after digging into all of this, what does it really mean for you listening? This deep dive into your sources, it certainly reveals a pattern that's pretty hard to ignore.
Millions dead, trillions spent, record profits for some.
And this whole pattern, it seems to accelerate when fear is dialed up, when defense budgets balloon, and when pathways to peace just aren't really explored with the same urgency or resources.
And you don't necessarily have to decide if any specific war is right or wrong to grapple with this. The insights here really invite you to just consider whether this whole business model is something you implicitly or explicitly buy into.
So the really critical question these sources leave us with is, what if? What if we, as informed global citizens, actually started tracking where all this public money goes?
What if we really audited the balance sheet? arms on one side, aid and development on the other.
That is a powerful thought to take away. So maybe just a few things you can consider after hearing all this.
Think about the implications of these financial cycles we've discussed.
Consider the power you might have in supporting humanitarian causes, the ones working on that peace dividend side of the ledger.
And maybe, just maybe, ask some